Okay, well, I'm so sorry about our technical difficulties. Let's start again. Practice makes perfect. So sorry about that, guys. So my name is Hillary Schwab, and I am the Edible Garden Girl. Most of you know me as a professional photographer. I've been a photographer in this area for many, many years. And let me tell you how I ended up as the Edible Garden Girl. So last spring, the pandemic took a big toll on my photography business, and I found myself with extra time to schedule. So also at this time, my 88-year-old father, Ed Schwab, passed away from cancer. And I wanted to do something to honor my dad. So I thought about it, and my dad taught me how to garden from a very young age. I spent a lot of time picking out seeds with him, and I have fond memories of planting those seeds in our home garden, of harvesting the vegetables, and of weeding. I was the star weeder in my family. Nobody else liked to weed, so I got total brownie points for that. And so I wanted to, my whole life I've been a gardener, and my dad was an organic gardener, and he's the one that taught me all about organic gardening. The other thing growing up is I was a super picky eater. And because of that, I learned as a young adult that if I started cooking my own food, then I was always have food to eat that I like to eat. And my mom can attest to that. So both of these events led me to think about how I could creatively express myself through the outlet of combining my photography, my gardening, and my love of cooking. And the result was the ediblegardengirl.com blog. So the blog provides gardening tips and healthy recipes. And it seems because of the pandemic that a lot of you are gardening and cooking, which you didn't do before. So I thought that it might be helpful and fun for me to make it my mission to teach the joy of growing your own food organically and how to prepare those vegetables in a tasty and healthy way. So today, I'm going to talk to you about butternut squash. So here's my butternut squash. So what is it? It is a hard winter squash with a narrow, glad you can see it this time, with a narrow neck and a bulb that contains the seeds on the end. Its skin is a cream color and it's smooth. Inside, the flesh is a deep orange, kind of the color of pumpkin, and it's very dense. Its flavor is very similar to pumpkin or sweet potato. So let's start with a quick little thing about how you plant butternut squash before we move on to our recipes. So butternut squash is very easy to grow from seeds. You plant the seeds, 4 or 5 seeds together in a little circle in full sun after the first frost of the spring, which is about the second week in May in the mid-Atlantic, which is where we live. And it's about 50 days or so until the first fruits start appearing. And until harvest. The plants will keep producing until the first frost in the fall. I like to plant the seeds between the flowers in my front yard garden beds. The fruits grow on a vine that grows on the ground. So as the plants grow, they kind of snake around my beds, around my flowers. The other flowers act as pollinators for the flowers of the fruit. And before you know it, there's little tiny squash growing in between the flowers in the flower bed. Once you see, so that the skin starts off as like a green color, and then it turns this beautiful cream color. Once you see that the squash has turned to the cream color, you need to leave it on the vine for a week or so that it can sweeten. And there's another word for that is that so it can cure, if you want to be, fancy garden lingo. The harvested squash stores really, really well in a cool, dry place for months. So it is a great vegetable that, keeps on giving for well into the winter season. So, I'm sorry. Thought I was missing my notes. Butternut squash is a super good source of fiber. It is packed with vitamin C, magnesium and potassium, and it is also low calorie for those of us that are watching our calories. It is not eaten very often raw. It is mostly roasted or pureed in soups or pies. So today I'm going to show you how to roast the squash and make a really great butternut squash salad. And I'm also going to show you how to make butternut squash soup. So let's get started. Okay, so these are the ingredients that you need to make this salad. First, you need the butternut squash. So I'm going to show you how to peel and cut up. Then you need, let's see, you need pecans. I like to start with whole pecans and then I break them into pieces because if you buy the chopped pecans, then the pieces are kind of tiny. Then you need some goat cheese. I also like to start with a whole log of goat cheese because when you buy it pre-crumbled, it's a little bit dry, but you can do it either way. And lastly, you're going to need arugula. So arugula is another vegetable that is super easy to grow in your garden. And the thing about growing arugula is it's very prolific. So you need to grow it. I grow it in one of my boxed in beds in my yard because if you don't do that, it'll just take over your whole garden. So it's perennial and it comes back every year. So once you planted your seeds and your arugula has come up, you can leave it there over the winter. The part that you see will die, but the roots will live. And next year and every year after, you'll have arugula to eat, fresh arugula from your garden. So let's get started on cutting up the butternut squash. So the first thing we need to do is to peel the squash. So the skin is very, very hard. And so you just go down the length of the squash and peel it. You might have to go peel the same spot twice because you want to get that light yellow part, which is still not the sweet part. You want to get down to you see the nice orange flesh of the butternut squash. Okay. So you just go down that whole length of the squash. You gotta be careful because the squash gets a little wet on the inside. You don't want to slip. Okay. So there we go. Just keep on rotating it as you go around. And I'm going to put it down because it's getting slippery. And I'm going to keep on peeling it until I have the whole thing peeled. Okay. Yep. Turn it this way. All right. Let's do a little bit on this side. All right. So the first thing is the peeling. It is a very dense squash. All right, got it. Okay, so now I'm going to cut up the squash. Let's give 1 second here. Okay. How do they do this on cooking shows? All right. So first you cut off the ends. So here I am cutting off the end with the stem. And then I'm going to cut off the other end where the bulb is. And then I'm going to cut it into 1-inch slices. That's 1, 2 slices, 3. Okay. Got to put a lot of oomph into it. It's kind of, it's a very dense squash. Okay. So the way I cut these up into 1-inch cubes is I take each of my rounds and I cut them into 3 sections, one direction, then I turn them the other direction and I cut them into 3 sections. So there we go. Put them in my bowl. So, all right, so that's 3. You want to try to keep them even in size because when you roast it, you want them all to roast and brown nicely, so you don't burn some and have some be undercooked. Okay. So we got that. Okay. So cameraman, can they see this? Can they see the squash? Yes? Okay. Move that back that way. Okay, so then the next thing I need to do is I need to seed the squash. So inside the bulb, there are seeds. This is very similar to, is there a problem, cameraman?
No problem.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to take a spoon and I'm just going to scoop out my seeds into a bowl. You can actually roast these seeds like you do pumpkin seeds in the oven. They're just as nutritious and low calorie as pumpkin seeds.
Sorry, but we lost.
But today we're just going to scoop them out so that we can. All right, come on, come on.
We lost.
Okay. So then I'm just going to cut up. Then we're just going to cut up these pieces here. No video? How do you know?
Switch to. Okay.
Is it back? Sorry about that. Looks like I got a text and that messed up my whole Zoom. Okay, so here we go. Cutting up the butternut squash, putting it in the bowl. Almost done here. Okay. Yeah, I guess my fan club should wait until I'm done with the whole video if you want to, text me because messing it up. Okay. Just got a few more pieces here to cut up. Got a little bit of seed there we want to get out of here. Got that. And got that. And that. Okay. So there we have our cut up butternut squash. So now I'm going to get our baking sheet because we need to roast the squash. Let's get this out of here. Where is the baking sheet? Oh, we accidentally put it in the oven and now it's very hot. So now we have this baking sheet. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we have our baking sheet. We're going to put the butternut squash on the baking sheet. Spread it out. Then I'm going to drizzle olive oil over the butternut squash. And I'm going to take my spatula and I'm going to mix it up so that the oil is evenly coated around the butternut squash.
Samson, stop.
Okay, then I'm going to spread it out on the pan. Okay, so now we're going to roast the butternut squash in the oven at preheated 400 degrees for 45 minutes. You want to take it out in the middle so that you can turn the squash because you want it to evenly brown. So let's go to the oven. Put this in the oven. Oh, there's our baking sheet. Okay. And I just happen to have some already roasted butternut squash here. So we can bring it over back to our table. And I can show you how to assemble the salad. So the first thing you do is you put the arugula on the plate. I've got 2 cups of arugula here. There we go. Then you're going to add the butternut squash. We'll add that on top like that. I have 1 cup of butternut squash. You don't use the whole squash. There we go, my roasted squash. Then I'm going to add the goat cheese. Crumbled goat cheese on top. Let's get that on there. Oh, I have 1/2 cup of goat cheese. The recipes are on the recipe page in my blog, so you don't have to be writing this down or memorizing it. And lastly, I'm going to add the pecans to the top of the salad. And I have 1/2 cup of pecan pieces that I'm putting on top of the salad. Then I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top of the salad. I'm going to season it with salt and pepper. And there you go. Here is an amazing salad. So this salad is one of my favorite flavor combinations. You have the sweetness of the roasted butternut squash, the sour and kind of creamy texture of the goat cheese, the peppery arugula, and the crunchy nutty pecans. It is great as like a side salad or as a main course with some crusty bread. Now this is a salad either for a main course or for 2 servings of a side salad. Okay, so that was our roasted butternut squash salad. Next, I'm going to show you how to make a super easy butternut squash soup. So let me get these dishes out of here and we'll get started on that. So we'll put the salad there. There we go. Do I still have video and audio? Okay. Not sure what that was for. Okay. Okay. So what I have here is a convection cooktop that works great on a counter. It's great for people that don't have a cooktop. If you have like a studio apartment, you have to use special pans with it though, because they need to be magnetic. Okay. So there we go. Get the cover there. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do in order to make the butternut squash soup is you need to cut up, seed, and peel the butternut squash. Now I've already done that for this, so I've got my butternut squash right here. The only other ingredients you need to make this super easy, delicious soup is you need a little bit of onion, you need a little bit of butter, you need a little bit of dark brown sugar, and you also need some vegetable stock. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of olive oil into my pan. Let's see, can the camera see inside my pan? Okay, I'm going to have to tilt it towards you because we don't have a fancy dancy camera. All right, let me put this, it's down here. Okay, so let's put on the cooktop. And let's put the heat up. Get things hot in the kitchen here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, but in here there's, oh, it doesn't like it when you pick it up though. Okay, so you need to heat up the olive oil in your pan first. Whoa. Move the lid over a little bit. Okay, once you see that the olive oil is heated up, you can feel it. Feel the heat coming on there. Then I'm going to add the butternut squash to the pan and we're going to brown it. So here I'm going to add my butternut squash. So can you see inside the pan? Yep. Okay. All right. So it's going to take a few minutes for the butternut squash to brown. So while that's happening, I'm going to show you a good way how to dice an onion. Get my little thing here. Okay. Get this out of the way here. All right. So here we've got this very large onion. We only need half a cup of onion, diced onion for this recipe, so we don't want to go too crazy. What happened to the knife? Hold on. All right, got my knife. So now, let me clean my knife. I'm going to cut off the, I'm going to make sure you can see. You can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the end of the onion. So the best way to dice an onion is to take your knife. Oh, hold on. Sounds like our butternut squash could use some turning. Starting to brown. Okay, butternut squash starting to brown. All right. So I take my onion and I make slits in it. Not all the way through, just partially through. I want to turn it so you can see it. I'm going to make 4 or 5 slits one direction, and then I'm going to make 4 or 5 slits the other direction. So you don't do it all the way through so that your onion is still holds itself together. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few slices, and you will instantly have diced onions. See that? Diced onions. Diced onions. Okay, so I need about half a cup. So I'm going to take a little bit more. Okay. Get my onion out of here. Get those big pieces out of here. We only need half a cup. So I think that's about half a cup. All right. Okay, let's go back to our butternut squash. Starting to smell good in here. Sorry that you can't smell it. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit of time. So I thought that maybe we could talk about a few fun facts about butternut squash. So, and I guess since you guys can't respond, I'll ask questions and then I'll answer them myself. So, does anybody know where butternut squash originated from? Oh, I do. It originated in South America, and it was eaten by the Mexicans very, very long ago as 5,000 BC. So definitely been around a while. Another fun fact, I hope you can hear me with all that sizzling, is that butternut squash is the first vegetable that is given to babies when they start eating real human food, because it's easy for the kids to digest and because the babies like the sweet taste of the butternut squash. So there you go, our first food. But the biggie that I actually had to do a lot of research on when I was putting together this presentation is butternut squash a fruit or a vegetable? Now that is a really, really good question. So I did some research so I could tell you, because I know you're dying to know. And if anybody asks you, you want to be able to give them the right answer. So this is what I found out. So this squash, a fruit is something that contains seeds inside and that it develops from the flower producing part of the plant. That makes it botanically, I think that's how you say that word, a fruit. Vegetables are from other parts of the plant, such as the root or the leaves or the stems. But because butternut squash is cooked like a vegetable, we all call it a vegetable. but really it is a fruit. So I know you'll all be able to sleep good tonight knowing that. All right, we're getting there. Okay, so now I'm going to add my chopped onions. Two tablespoons of dark brown sugar. Does not want to come out of here. There we go. Dark brown sugar. And little few shakers of salt. Okay. So now I'm going to mix that all up in the pan. And what we need to do now is we need to soften the onions. So here it is. I'm mixing it up. Can everybody see it? Okay, like that. I'm going to put the cover on. Oh, you can probably hear me better now too. So we're going to give it like a minute or two to kind of soften up. Turn it down a tiny bit to soften up those onions. So the other, burning question for the day is, what is the difference between a summer squash and a winter squash? Well, I'm going to tell you. A summer squash is kind of a soft-skinned squash where the skin is soft enough that it can be eaten, and it's also delicious. And it's better to harvest those squash when they're small, not when they get big like baseball bats. So like a zucchini is a soft squash. But a winter squash is a squash that is harvested and eaten in its mature fruit stage when the seeds inside have fully matured. So like a zucchini, you eat the seeds of a zucchini, but a butternut squash, you don't eat the seeds with the rest of the fruit. So because the butternut squash is a hard squash and it has this tough rind on the outside, that makes it really possible for the fruit to be stored and kept for many months into the winter. And that is why they call it a winter squash, even though it isn't harvested in the winter because nothing can grow with the ground frozen. So it doesn't totally make sense that we call it a winter squash, but apparently that is the reason why we do it. Okay, so let's get back to this. All right. It looks like our onions are now softened. And what we're going to do now, that was hot, is we're going to add the vegetable stock. There we go. I'm adding 1 quart of vegetable stock. Okay. Now I'm totally feeling like Julia Childs. Okay. All right, so just mix that up a little bit. So once you get to this stage of making of the soup, you need to let it, you bring it to a boil and then you simmer it on the stove for 30 minutes. So I have already simmered a batch on the stove for 30 minutes so that we can take it to the next step. So let me turn this off. Bring this over to the stove. You don't need to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I have here a batch that has already been simmered for 30 minutes. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to puree the soup. Before I puree it though, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of butter. This is, Earth Balance, so it's a vegan butter to my soup. So now we're gonna I use an immersion blender to make my soup, and I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see what I'm doing. Let's see, we got this thing here that needs an extra little twist because I need more. There we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so hopefully you're going to be able to see what I'm doing while I'm doing it. All right, so I'm just going to put my immersion blender in. Let's see if you can see inside. I'm just going to make a huge mess. I'm going to blend the whole thing up. All right, there we go. Okay, now we're gonna go for high. Ah, that was messy. Okay, so now we've blended it to a smooth, creamy consistency. Put this immersion blender over here. All right, okay. Get this out of here. So now I'm going to take my soup. This soup is eaten hot. I'm going to take my hot soup, creamy soup. I'm going to put it in my bowl. And then you can, if it's optional, you can top it with some roasted nuts. I've topped mine with, I'm going to top mine with, these are roasted pine nuts that I've already toasted. So you can just sprinkle a few pine nuts on top of that. And that was my easy butternut squash soup. Well, I hope you've enjoyed cooking with me today. You can download both of these recipes from my blog. And there's also plenty more tips and recipes that you can look at if you go to it, ediblegardengirl.com. If you subscribe, there we go. If you subscribe to my blog, you'll get, it's free to subscribe, and you'll get 1 email a week with all my newest posts. Here, let me just get the salad back here so we can look at the pretty food. So here are both of the recipes that we made today. So the other thing is that I've started a shop on my blog. And since it's the holidays, if you're looking for a gift for the gardener or the cook in your family or your friends, this really cool, sexy apron, which says the chef is hot. You can give it to someone you know and totally flatter them. It's perfect it's a nice lightweight apron, and it's only $29. You can order it from the shop. And another thing I have on the shop is a mask that says, I grow my own food. We're going to be wearing masks for probably the next 6 to 9 months. And people are turning masks into statement masks. So if you know a gardener who is proud of being a home gardener, you can get them one of these masks. They're only $12. Because, you know, who doesn't want people to know that you grow your own food? So this winter, I'm going to be teaching new recipes, and I'm going to have some guest chefs on my blog. So I hope you'll look forward to seeing those. And I'll also be providing tips for planting your spring garden. You're going to learn how to test your soil and prepare it for spring. And another thing I'm really super excited about is deck gardening. I know that everybody doesn't have like the perfect yard with the perfect soil and the perfect sun. But a lot of people have decks or patios that are in really nice sun. So I'm going to teach you how to grow vegetables in pots or in beds. And you can still get herbs and vegetables right from your patio or your deck. So you're not limited to the real estate that you have. So I would just like to thank the Poolsville seniors for inviting me to give this presentation to you, especially Maria. Thank you, Maria, in particular, for giving me the opportunity to share my love of gardening and cooking with all of you. I'd also like to thank my cameraman, Scott, for his help in making this work. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
A reminder, everyone, to send your questions in the chat so that she can read
No
them.
questions. Let's see.
Arugula start from seed.
Yes, you can totally start. You start arugula from seed. Absolutely.
How do you store the soup?
Okay, so you can obviously put it in the fridge and eat it within, 2 to 3 days, or you can freeze it. Freezing it might change the texture just a tiny bit, but I've frozen it and it's delicious when it's defrosted. So yes, you can do that as well.
Can you use the seeds from the squash to plant?
That's an interesting question. I tend not to do that because the seeds, especially if you get the squash from a grocery store, because they're treated with chemicals and things, and sometimes those seeds won't germinate.
What vegetable are you going to focus on next?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, I'm so sorry. What vegetable am I going to focus on next? Well, that is an interesting question. I've been enjoying butternut squash so much, I haven't thought past it. I will be doing a little bit of a focus on tomatoes because I had frozen my tomatoes from my garden as they ripened, and I put them in the freezer. And I'm going to show you all how to take all those tomatoes out of your freezer and make homemade tomato sauce that is delicious and healthy and good for you.
If I wanted to use a super shortcut, could I substitute canned pumpkin for the butternut squash soup?
Okay, so somebody wants to know if they could substitute canned pumpkin for the butternut squash. You could do that, but then you'd be making pumpkin soup instead of butternut squash soup. I don't see why not. The flavor and texture of pumpkin and butternut squash are very, very similar. So I totally think you could do that.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Well, we'll give
All
a
right.
round of applause.
Well,
a
thank you
silent
all
round
for
of
tuning in
applause like
tonight. I
this.
hope everybody has a good holiday, healthy holiday season.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Thank